Resident Evil 2 Remake is one of the solutions to Capcom's ever-growing problems in a series full of change. Change in gaming is super important, especially when you have a series that keeps expanding over the years. The Resident Evil franchise has games that come in many forms, and every new iteration of the games is expanding in the type of gameplay style it uses. Let's take a brief look back, then talk about the problems it caused.
I'm gonna do what I came here to do.
The fans that are most vocal about the series is of course fans of the original trilogy of games. This includes Resident Evil 1, Resident Evil 2, and of course Resident Evil 3. These games are loved by fans that was with Resident Evil since the start, the very beginning. These games were fixed camera angles, otherwise known as tank controls. You move your character forward by pressing up on the controller, and when turning directions they stay in place. Next you have a new wave of games with a different style, the traditional third-person gameplay experience. The camera this time was behind your character. No more was fixed camera angles, now you were always behind your character, and this gave a new breath into the series, making it more action-based. The first game to do this was Resident Evil 4, and the popularity of that game made third person the standard for the series. The next games to use this was of course Resident Evil 5, 6, Revelations 1 and 2, as well as other spin-offs. Now we have VR, or first person, here in 2017, which was a standard for first person. This camera angle had you looking through the eyes of your player. Resident Evil 7 was praised but at the same time hated, because the first person and the VR focus did kind of dumb the game down in terms of its graphical style. However, the game came out amazing and fans felt like this was a new take on the Resident Evil series that reminded them of the roots. In terms of gameplay style, there are still some games we haven't even touched yet, like rail shooting that was introduced in Resident Evil Dark Side Chronicles as well as Umbrella Chronicles. Some GBA games had the overhead view. When it comes to innovation in their games, Capcom takes big measures to make sure that the Resident Evil series keeps from becoming stale. However, this was the start of the biggest problem Capcom will have with the Resident Evil series.
Somewhere deep down in my heart, I still love you.
When I first started YouTube, I covered 2 games on this channel, one of them being Resident Evil. The series to me was, and still is, nothing short of amazing. From the characters to the survival horror elements, it was a thrill every playthrough and discussion. However, it all came to an end around Resident Evil 5's release. Resident Evil 5 was the start of a problem Capcom will be trying to deal with for years. The problem was the anger of their fan base. The series as a whole may seem innovative and Capcom refusing to let the series become stale, but from the inside, lots of drama was brewing among fans. First of all, it started small. Fans were complaining about Resident Evil 5, how a terrible AI was forced down the players' throats, and it made it seem like the player always had to babysit the AI, using resources if an AI got hurt, and shared bullets. But the biggest complaint is that this game is not what makes Resident Evil, well, Resident Evil. These complaints were minor, but they exploded and expanded with the release of Resident Evil 6. Resident Evil 6 created what I call a civil war with fans. On one side, you had people praising the game for the new design structure, while others openly hated it for ignoring survival horror, while others praised it for its storytelling. Others said that the story had more plot holes than Swiss cheese. Some said it took guts putting so many characters in the game, while others say that the characters are inconsistent with the personalities from past games, and that they can be totally different characters altogether, and that putting in so many characters was just Capcom trying to bring in the old school fans. Yeah, I think you start to see the point with fans in the Resident Evil community. Resident Evil 7's release was just the same arguments all over again. Soon you had people attacking other fans, you had people openly insulting other YouTubers. Developers were getting hate online in more places like Twitter and forums. This community was ready to explode, a battle between the old school fans that were with Capcom since the very beginning versus the new fans, the fans that started with Resident Evil 4, who enjoy this high-paced game, that a series that focused on simple puzzles was not for them. So what is the solution? Capcom has already doubled down on first person going into Resident Evil 8, but how do you get the old school fans back? And that answer came in a way that will send shockwaves through the fan base in ways that felt unbelievable.
Sorry, my face is tired from dealing with everything.
August 12, 2015, the moment the fans lost their collective shit. The official Resident Evil's YouTube channel uploaded the We Do It video. This video has been memed to death, by the way. Announced Resident Evil 2 Remake was officially approved. This sent every old school player ablaze. Every Resident Evil 2 fan, including myself, rejoiced in happiness. And after countless leaks, speculation videos, memes, arguments about Resident Evil 2 Remake occurred, 3 years later we finally got a trailer and a release date during E3 2018. Although people are still angry over Resident Evil 2 Remake not being in first person or having fixed camera angles, this was undeniable proof Capcom was listening, and listen they did. But how can this fix the problem in the fanbase? Capcom is already no stranger to remakes. Resident Evil 1 Remake was released on the PS3 in 2015. This was a remastered version of the 2002 release that was on Nintendo's consoles. When this thing dropped, it was a storm on PSN. Everybody was trying to download it, and the game actually held a record for one of the most day one sales ever on PSN. That record may not stand today, but it was a big deal. And Capcom announcing Resident Evil 2 Remake, they must have realized this was the way to appeal to the hardcore audience. Because of the crazy positivity the trailer for Resident Evil 2 Remake gathered, it seemed Capcom realized they needed to take this step to appeal to the old school fans. Not shortly after, Capcom announced that they will be continuing to remake games after Resident Evil 2 Remake is released. And I'm sure the feedback for the trailer definitely influenced this decision. Yeah, there are still fans out there that continue to nitpick Resident Evil 2 Remake for again not having fixed camera angles. Even the music for the game is currently getting criticized, but that is fine. But for the first time in years, positivity is canceling out the negativity. Doing this, the fans who like progression in Resident Evil, like Resident Evil 7 was, or Capcom fans who like the horror side, like the original trilogy fans are, this was a way to finally satisfy both parties.
Hell fucking yeah!
Change in gaming is important. You need to change so that the brand won't get stale. But what happens if you change too much? What happens if you ignore the consumers that built you? What you get is people always arguing and going at each other's throats. No matter how much you change, you can't forget the people that brought you to this point. And to bring them back, you just hype up their nostalgia. You strive for change while catering to those who brought you to where you are today. And Capcom has done this, and it's why I love Resident Evil. If you like this video, I highly appreciate it if you give it a thumbs up, but if you didn't, let me know by giving it a thumbs down and leaving a comment down below. If you like this critical look, definitely check out the Days Gone critical look I put out. We analyzed Days Gone and its biggest battle in gaming today. Let me know all of your thoughts. I'm gonna be out here. Thank you guys for listening. Deuces.